you start, you circle the board once for each player. Then we say, as friends we gather, hearts are true.
As friends we gather, hearts are true.
Spirits near we call to you.
Spirits near we call to you.
Is someone here with us?
Welcome to Now Playing Podcast's Ouija Retrospective Series.
How are you even supposed to talk to someone using a board game?
Part of our board game movie retrospective series.
You guys want to play?
Hosted by Arnie.
Do not go seeking answers from the dead.
Justin.
You seem too cool for these kinds of things.
And Stuart.
I can't help it, I'm a picky bitch.
But be warned, this episode will contain detailed plot spoilers and mildly objectionable language.
We're none of us perfect, Lena.
We hope you enjoy the show.
Let's begin.
Today, we're discussing Ouija, starring Olivia Cooke, Darren Kagazoff, Douglas Smith, Bianca Santos, and Lin Shaye, directed by Styles White. If someone is here with us, make yourself known. Oh yeah, well, I'm here with us, Arnie, co-host of Now Playing.
And Stuart.
Hi friends, it's Justin.
And we're back in the board game retrospective, which brings up an interesting question. Are Ouija boards board games? Why did Parker Brothers mass market what should be an occult item that their parents should have told us, stop playing with the devil, right?
Yeah, I remember growing up and Ouija boards were spiritual and mystic and dark and dangerous and a pathway to Satan and sold at KB Toys.
Right.
And so I got one of those when I was 8 and I remember playing it with some friends. I know I played it with the girl I talked about friend zoning me in Teen Wolf on that podcast. I talked about a girl I grew up with. She and I used the Ouija board a few times, and I don't know if you and I ever did it, Stuart, but it was always that thing of, I'm not moving it. Well, of course I'm moving it.
I had it purely as decoration. I kept it around in college. It just sat on a bookshelf as a conversation piece, but I never would bother to actually sit there because why would you? It doesn't work. I didn't believe in it. I just thought it was kind of it fit right there with the lava lamp and the wave machine. It was just a statement piece. And it was fun sometimes to watch people's reaction. Every now and then you'd see the person that really had a problem with it. They'd come in the room, they'd be like, oh no, no.
Yeah, it just feels like one of those things that by the time you're old enough to actually think about what it's doing, you're probably not really buying into it at that point. It's more for 9, 10-year-olds to scare themselves with it, sleepovers.
We did like that stuff. Yeah, slumber parties. There was the whole thing, light as a feather, Bloody Mary. I even kind of throw Magic 8 Ball into that. Remember there was the thing that you could do. I never could figure out how to fold them, but there was those paper fortune tellers where you pick a number, pick a color.
Yeah, I used to make those all the time in 3rd grade. Yeah.
Yeah, the occult was cool.
Yeah, MASH, right?
Kids I certainly loved horror at single-digit ages. I wanted to have a connection with the spiritual world. It was just hard to believe in it, particularly when Parker Brothers is going to stamp its logo on it. Of course that doesn't work, right? That's not going to be any more an instrument of evil than Candyland is going to make you gain weight. It's not going to work like that, folks. So why did they do it? How did this thing that I associate with, a spiritualism movement, we could call them mystics or maybe con artists, but turn of the century, there were a lot of people that made their coin duping people into believing they could talk to their dead loved ones.
Yeah, the Ouija board goes way back in time. I did more research than just the wiki page on this one, and objects similar to a Ouija board go back to ancient China in 500 BC, where they used spirit boards to communicate with the dead. And the spirit board and the planchette and various tools were used to communicate with those in the beyond for centuries.
And then in 1890, somebody said, I'm going to get a patent. And it became something you could actually sell in a store, which is just a weird moment, right?
What happened was they had tried to patent it several times. And the patent office said, no, this is not patentable because it's a spirit board, and spirit boards have been around forever. I mean, they were very common in the 19th century. But what happened was this one guy, Elijah Bond, went and tried to patent it, and they're like, well, it needs a name. And so he apparently asked the board itself, what is your name? And using the planchette, it spelled out Ouija, or Ouija, and the patent office went, all right, now you can have a patent for it. It's called a Ouija board, and you have it. And he only kept that patent for 2 years. It turned out making them was too stressful for him, and so he sold it to a guy named William Fuld, who is most often credited with inventing the Ouija board, but he actually just bought the patent and founded a novelty company, and he made over $1 million from selling Ouija boards before World War I.
Yeah, it seems to me like the device, not surprisingly, it's connected to times of mortality in American history. The Depression or World Wars, Vietnam, anytime things are going to have a high mortality, people want to go talk to those people, right? Give me the device that lets me talk to the dead.
Yep, including Vietnam War in the 60s, which is when Parker Brothers bought the rights to Ouija boards, and within the first year, they outsold Monopoly. They sold over 2.3 million Ouija boards in 1966, and the Vietnam War was credited with that, and they sold Ouija boards for decades, but by the end of the 20th century, keep in mind the 90s were relatively a time of peace for America. We had our incursions here and there, but it was not like anything in the 21st century, and people stopped getting interested in Ouija boards, and Parker Brothers made it smaller. They tried to make it spookier with a glow-in-the-dark design, but before Parker Brothers ended up being sold to Hasbro, the Ouija board had actually even been removed from their website and was seen more as a novelty item versus the must-have game that it used to be.
All right, so a couple things. One, just for a pronunciation thing, because I've heard it said lots of different ways. I've caught myself saying Ouija. You're telling me it's just Ouija or Ouija, which Ouija, it sounds too much like squeegee. I can't do it.
Yeah, those are the two pronunciations. No matter how you do it, it's 2 syllables, and the first one is we, and then you can go ja or you can go g. And the reason why the first is we, it's a misconception, but something I had read while researching this is the name came from 2 versions of the word yes, French being oui and German being ja. And so that would be we ja, but it turns out it's, like I said, that guy just asked the board, what is your name? And so it is pronounced Ouija or Ouija, but it is 2 syllables. I also found myself pronouncing it Ouija for a little while, and that is most certainly wrong.
So the other thing that you said is it was a really popular thing in the 60s. And yet for me, what feels like the explosion for Ouija boards is The Exorcist. This is the first time I ever heard of one, was the fact that Regan McNeil brought Pazuzu upon her because she played it alone. And that became the whole thing. When you buy a Ouija board from Parker Brothers, don't you dare play it alone, or you'll get a demon attached to you and your head will spin and you're puking green.
See, I never heard this don't play it alone stuff. The instructions I remember from my Ouija board were very little. It was like, put your hands here and close your eyes and ask if there's anyone in the room. There was none of this incantation like we're going to talk about in the movie or any of these kinds of rules. These were things that the writers and director, Juliet Snowden, and her husband, Stiles White, who directed this, just Googled what are common urban myths around Ouija boards and found stuff like don't play it alone and don't play it in a graveyard and stuff like that. That stuff I'd never heard.
No, but Exorcist, Captain Howdy, that whole scene, it's, you know, that movie's pretty ambiguous. You could make arguments about other things, but I think you could more or less infer the reason why it was her and not somebody else was that she played with that board by herself.
And that is not the only Ouija movie, though. I mean, some listeners were on our Facebook group bringing up all of these various movies that they thought we'd be covering as part of the board game retrospective. There's in the 60s, the movie 13 Ghosts had a Ouija board.
No, we're not doing a retrospective on everything that has a Ouija board. We're doing the Parker Brothers Ouija board.
Hasbro now. Hasbro bought it.
Okay, fair. Yeah, whatever.
But yeah, Ouija boards have been in a lot of movies before and after Exorcist. Exorcist is probably the biggest, but there's I think it's mostly direct-to-video franchise Witchboard.
Oh yeah, Tawny Katane, if those that remember music videos, the girl that did cartwheels on top of car hoods for Whitesnake, she had this horror series Witchboard where she played with one by herself, because again, that's how you get into trouble. If you play it with friends, you'll be okay. But if you play it by yourself, you're going to be possessed and talk in scary voices and, I guess, Dave Mustaine and be in Whitesnake videos.
And Paranormal Activity even had a Ouija board in it, if you remember that movie.
It caught on fire. Yes, it moved by itself and caught on fire. I remember that scene.
Yeah, and there's even other movies named Ouija. Like there was a Filipino movie from 2007 named Ouija, and I was like, that was my response, is there's a lot of movies with Ouija boards, there's a lot of movies named after Ouija, and we are doing the officially sanctioned, yes, Hasbro said, yes, let's officially sanction horror movies based off of our board game.
This is a crazy combo. What we're here to talk about was a movie that when it first got announced, they were talking like it was going to be a giant tentpole. I heard $100 million for the budget. This was going to be A-list stars, biggest film of the year kind of stuff. What happened? Hasbro, Michael Bay's Platinum Dunes, and then eventually Blumhouse, all hanging out together trying to make this kid's toy into some kind of big budget concept. Sounds crazy. The movie we're here to talk about could not have cost $100 million. Could not.
No, what happened was Michael Bay was working very closely with Hasbro on all those Transformer films. And some of Michael Bay's producers at Platinum Dunes were trying to think of other things they could make because they had done a string of horror movie reboots. I mean, they did Texas Chainsaw, Amityville, Hitcher, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. They were trying to come up with something original. And so they asked Michael Bay to talk to the head of Hasbro at that time and say, what about doing a Ouija board movie? And so he did. Hasbro was like, great. They had Simon Kinberg writing a script. They had McG on board to direct. It was going to be produced by Michael Bay.
McG was like a fake Michael Bay. He did the Charlie's Angels movies and people thought he was going to be big, but I think it was the name. He just became a joke.
I don't know whatever happened to him. I liked that first Charlie's Angels movie. You can hear our review in the archives, but he did kind of disappear.
Terminator Salvation, I believe, was the beginning of the end. James Cameron, he is not.
No, but he's done a shit ton of movies since then, none of which I've seen. But they were talking like it was going to be a Raiders of the Lost Ark or like Brendan Fraser's The Mummy. And Universal Studios was backing it.
But The Mummy is set in Egypt and you can, so is Raiders of the Lost Ark. As far as I know, Harrison Ford never picked up a Ouija board. Like, how could that be some kind of swashbuckler? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I never found that script, and what ended up happening is Universal saw this ballooning budget. They were at 125 to 150 million, like you said.
This is like someone's cocaine budget. They were trying to funnel something into this country. There's no way that a Ouija board movie would cost that. That's offensive.
And so Hasbro and Platinum Dunes kept wanting to do the movie, couldn't find anyone to finance it. They ended up saying, what if we just go a completely different way with this? What if we, instead of going big and epic, go small? And they brought in Marty Noxon from Buffy to write a script, and they didn't really like it. And while all this was going on, Platinum Dunes got in bed with Jason Blum, who Jason Blum had done a lot of horror website stuff, but then got into movie production, becoming kind of like a Roger Corman, but with quality. You know, where like he's doing everything in-house and he's doing everything cheap.
Frugal. The frugal horror guy. I mean, we've covered lots of his work. If it costs more than $5 million, he don't deal with it.
Well, Blumhouse and Platinum Dunes came together to make The Purge. And so that's how those two became bedfellows. And the guys at Platinum Dunes were really impressed with how Jason Blum could take this low-budget stuff and turn it around. And so they said, you know, we're working together on The Purge. Why don't we also work together on this Ouija idea? And so then Blumhouse started bringing in this Juliet Snowden and Styles White to completely page one rewrite a Ouija script. And they really wanted these two, for some reason, to write it.
Yeah, interesting. Like, you say Styles White, I don't think that means anything. Maybe to anybody.
This is the only film he's ever directed.
Yes, but he had his name written on some other horror and horror-adjacent projects. It was this weird thing that happened. Like, horror had kind of been dead at the turn of the millennium. And then, like, this movie called Boogeyman, not the one that's Stephen King, but some other thing called Boogeyman, came out with his name on it, and it, like, opened at 40 million. And, like, it was this huge hit, and no one even understood why, other than, wow, there's a huge appetite for horror we're not serving. And I think he coasted on that ever since. He wrote some Nick Cage movie called Knowing. He wrote a Jewish spin on The Exorcist called The Possession. And then, yeah, this was the end, really. This is him finally getting to direct and then being summoned off to the spirit world, I think.
Yeah, he really comes from a background in movie effects. He's been working since the 90s with Stan Winston Studios and did a lot of horror stuff after that. And they wanted him to write this so badly that the only way they could convince him is if they gave him his directorial debut. I guess a blessing and a curse. I mean, this movie made a ton of money, and yet he seems to have ended up in movie jail.
Mm-hmm. No one liked it. This is the interesting thing I knew about it. I, of course, love horror movies. And you tell me there's a movie about a Ouija board. Maybe I won't go to the theater, but I'll go ahead and see it. This thing opened big. Number one, bigger than John Wick. John Wick opened the same weekend in number two and didn't make as much money in its entire run as Ouija did. But yeah, you tell me anyone that remembers having a good experience watching it. I mean, it was just hated. Fangoria magazine called it one of the worst horror movies of the year, and they love shit.
That really puts it in perspective, though, because John Wick does not feel like an old 10-year-old franchise at this point, but I guess, 2014 it is, but this original Ouija movie, this does feel like a lifetime ago when this was out.
Because it just made no impact. Apparently it made 50 million in the States and 50 more internationally, but it feels like nobody saw it. Nobody wants to talk about it.
Yeah, I ended up seeing this on video because in 2016, 2017, I was doing a lot of film reviews for a UK-based radio station. And they would bring me on live once a week to talk about movies that had just released in the UK. And so that had me going to see a lot of movies on weird schedules because UK release dates didn't meet our release dates. And so I'm like, all right, what the hell's opening in Britain this week? And seeing what I needed to see. And one of the movies opening there was Ouija Origin of Evil. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'll watch the first Ouija and then go to theaters and see Ouija Origin of Evil and review it for this radio station. And so I watched this on iTunes and was like, oh, shit. Now I gotta go see a follow-up in theaters and talk about it on the radio?
Right. Yeah, exactly. No one, and I mean no one, said anything positive about this movie, ever. So I just didn't bother. There's enough horror movies out there, I feel like I could go watch something else. And it's PG-13 to boot. So I was really getting a Goosebumps, Fear Street, like this is for maybe a younger set. These stars here are people, if they're stars at all, they're in people that I don't know from too much. Things that I wouldn't have watched.
Yeah, there was a lot of production problems with this movie, too. Part of the reason maybe we haven't seen this director again is because this thing underwent some brutal test screenings, just absolutely awful test screenings that ended up with major reshoots. Lin Shaye was not in this film originally.
Yeah, I believe that. Honestly, I'll just to preview all of my thoughts. It feels like what happens in the first 50 minutes of this movie has nothing to do with the ghost story that's at the center of the piece.
And then there was another character in the film played by Erin Moriarty. If you know her from The Boys, is primarily what I know her from. She plays Starlight on that show. She had a plot in here, and she was completely left on the cutting room floor. And test screening after test screening, they did what they could with this. And yeah, not only did this open at number 1 above John Wick, which is just an abomination, but it stayed at number 1 the second week. I mean, opening at Halloween, people wanted horror. PG-13 means kids don't even have to buy a fake movie ticket to a different movie to go in and see this one. It made a total of 50 million domestic, 52 million international on a $5 to $8 million budget.
Yeah, it sounds like name recognition actually helped this movie more than it hurt, because for guys like us, we hear Ouija and like Stuart said, you're thinking Goosebumps style. It's not something I'm rushing to. It's like, oh, it's so scary. I think we avoided it because of the name, but it sounds like the general public decided that that was good enough reason to get their butts in seats.
I also think it was a good time for ghost movies. The Conjuring had just come out the year before. I think that whetted some appetites. Paranormal Activity was also huge around this time. The audiences were primed for spooky, things go bump ghost stories.
Yeah, and, Hasbro having some money, trying to make their properties happen probably meant that it had an ad campaign that, really got the youth market butts in seats. But what did they see? Arnie, let's dissect this plot, God help you, and we'll ask this Ouija to say goodbye.
As girls, Debbie and Lane love playing with the Ouija board. Now high school teens, though they look well old enough to buy liquor.
Oh my God, when they said my parents are going to be home soon, I'm like, what?
Don't even get me started on how her younger sister looks like she's 35.
Yeah, I honestly thought maybe they were college at best, but no, these are high school teens. Debbie, played by Shelley Hennig, continues to play with the Ouija board alone. Debbie becomes possessed and hangs herself. Shattered by the loss of her best friend, Lane, played by Olivia Cooke, uses the Ouija board to try and contact Debbie in the afterlife. Lane ropes into this game her sister Sarah, played by Anna Kodo, her boyfriend Trevor, as well as her friend Isabel, and Debbie's boyfriend Pete. They contact a spirit from beyond, but it's not Debbie. It's a spirit identifying itself by the initials DZ. Looking through the glass of the planchette, which is the little triangle you move around the board, Lane sees a little girl with her mouth sewn shut and the little girl's mother running at her. The group are haunted by DZ even when not at the board, seeing the message, "Hi friend," everywhere. Then people start dying. Isabel and Pete get possessed and die. Searching through Debbie's house, Lane finds photographs of the people who owned the house before Debbie's family. They find a girl named Doris Zander who disappeared, and Doris's sister Paulina, played by Lin Shaye, is in a mental hospital. Debbie visits Paulina, who says that her mother was a psychic who went insane and sewed Doris's mouth shut and killed her. To vanquish the spirit, Lane must find a secret room in Debbie's house where Doris's body is hidden and cut the threads from her mouth. Lane does, but it turns out that Paulina lied. By cutting the threads off Doris's mouth, Lane unleashed the full vengeance of the evil spirit. Doris was the malicious one, and Doris's mother was just trying to stop Lane from unleashing the evil. Lane is told by a family friend named Nona that she must destroy the Ouija board and Doris's corporeal body.
That's not her grandma?
According to the commentary, that is a family friend. According to Wikipedia, it is her grandmother.
Okay. Whatever. Doesn't really matter.
I mean, doesn't everyone have a Hispanic they can turn to for spiritual matters in times of need?
For two scenes.
Trevor, Sarah, and Lane go out to do this, but Trevor is drowned by the evil spirit. Doris starts to attack Sarah, so Lane protects her sister by using the Ouija board, which forces Doris to come and play. The ghost of Debbie appears and also uses the Ouija board. Together, the friends defeat Doris's spirit, and Lane and Sarah throw Doris's body and the Ouija board into the house's flaming boiler, burning them. Doris seems defeated, but horror movies love their surprise endings, so when Lane goes home, she sees the Ouija board planchette mysteriously unburned. She looks through the glass and sees something scary, maybe this film's grosses, as credits roll.
As we start, they waste no time making the advertisement that this was always intended to be. Two little girls, the primary target audience, setting out a Parker Brothers edition, the one that I had back in the 90s, in their bedroom to set up rules that you would think would be broken and causing the stars the trauma and toil that they're going to go through. As far as I can tell, never playing alone, using the board as a graveyard, and always saying goodbye, even though characters break all those rules, that doesn't seem to be why things happen to them. In fact, I'm not sure what is happening to them or why.
It is interesting to me that in this early scene, we see the Ouija board I had as a kid, which is notable because it has this very light wood. It's like a tan color with brown letters. And for the rest of the movie, we're going to be dealing with a much spookier Ouija board that is darker with light letters. But in this opening scene, the planchette is the same plastic piece of crap that I had as a kid.
Yeah, it looks cheap. I mean, again, that Parker Brothers thing, it did not look cool. You want to get a good one.
Yeah, the board looked cool. Like you said in college, I could see hanging it on a wall, having atmosphere, but the planchette always looked like crap.
And who knew this about the plastic eye being like the ghost finder? I never knew that.
Well, that's made up for this movie. It never was before. It was just how you could tell what letter it was over.
Okay, so they're taking something that is as thin as it comes. There is no plot. There's nothing to build on here. And they're trying to set up rules that you would think would be the story engine for what's to follow. Two little girls, one that's frightened of playing with the occult, one that can't resist. And here they go, scaring each other in childhood. And then we jump to adulthood, and Debbie's going to die for whatever she was doing. You tell me, what was she doing with the board?
Yeah, she is just playing with the board. We'll never know why. It's not like she had a dead parent that she was trying to reach out to, or she had a dead friend. I mean, why Lane is going to be doing the Ouija board makes sense. Why Debbie here is doing it, I don't know. And Debbie, if she looks familiar, Stuart, it is Shelley Hennig from Teen Wolf. She would debut on Teen Wolf the same year as this movie came out. I also saw her in Unfriended, but I won't do her the disservice of talking about that movie.
I didn't see the seasons with her in it, but in the movie, she's the naked wolf woman. So, yeah, I remember her being naked. But yes, I really, again, she does play by herself. We don't know why, but I guess that's a reason enough for the spirits to want to kill her? That's what they want?
Well, we're going to find out there's a spirit in her house. So the fact that she was playing in her house is really what did it, I think. I mean, doing it alone, I guess, opens the door. There's a dead body in her basement and nobody ever smelled it.
Parents that are never home. And again, she does look so old when she goes out and meets that childhood friend at the fence and says she doesn't want to go to the high school basketball game. I'm like, what? That's because you're too old.
Now, she was playing a teenager on Teen Wolf too, but again, everybody on that show looked way too old too. And here, because of the blonde hair and everything, and just the way they've made her up, she looks even older here than she did on Teen Wolf with the darker hair and the shorter hair. And yeah, her friend Lane outside also, I thought mid-20s, and they probably are, but I just thought the characters were supposed to be mid-20s.
Yeah, college at least.
Yeah, if I had spooked myself with a Ouija board and burned it, I would actually want to go hang out with friends. Why she's blowing off her boyfriend, why she's blowing off her best friend, why she feels she wants to eat leftovers in a house and then get spooked and possessed.
Well, maybe some of these reshoots were because people were confused by this, because later in the movie, we do get conveniently found recordings of herself. It's not like she was putting them on YouTube or anything. She was just recording herself going to clean the attic and finding the Ouija board.
I thought they were outtakes from Unfriended, really.
No, I get she found the board, and I get that she would play with the board, but the ghost that we're here to talk about, I'll put a pin in it, I won't get into it now. Why would she want this girl dead? I don't know. Why is she dead? Why is it pranking her the way that it is? She's in the kitchen, the door in the mudroom blows open, the stove catches on fire. None of this is relevant to either the ghost story or to how she's going to die.
Yeah, it was weird to me that the ghost wanted to boil some tea before hanging her. And yet there's the scene where she's like examining the gas stove. To me, this is feeling very much like Final Destination, only without the sense of humor. She's smelling for gas. Is it going to explode? She's walking through the kitchen. Is something going to hop out? And then she's going to hang herself with Christmas lights.
Yeah, she looks through the planchette, and that's the deal breaker. Whenever you do that, your eyes go milky white, and then suddenly you're possessed, and this demon, whatever it is, wants you dead. And so, yeah, she grabs a string of white lights, jumps off the banister of her 2-story stairwell, and friends that were waiting for her at breakfast are going to get the bad news.
And we're going to be introduced to Debbie's mom, who doesn't even get a first name, played by Robin Lively. And this is making me feel old, because when I was a kid, Robin Lively was the teen witch, and then she was the witch in Twin Peaks. Now she's the mother.
Hey, did you know, and this might be common knowledge, but I found this out a few months ago and was blown my mind, Robin Lively is half-sisters of Blake Lively.
No. Wow. Okay, interesting.
They also have a younger brother who's an actor. He played Rusty in European Vacation, is also a Lively.
Huh. Okay. Multi-talented Livelies.
And it's not because I was looking up Robin Lively because I used to have a crush on her.
I'm sure not.
Of course not.
We all want to know about her thespian skills here. But yes, you mentioned this woman that's the mom. She's here for one scene to hand off a box of junk that may or may not be relevant. I'm just going to cut to the chase. I feel like the next 40 minutes of this movie is filled with scenes in which characters say the most obvious things. Like the boyfriend walks in and goes, "I brought flowers," while he's holding flowers. I can't even, nothing is happening in this movie. Let's talk about the star. We know, we recognize, I actually know Olivia Cooke. She was the star of Ready Player One. She was in all the seasons of Bates Motel. I watched that TV series. I guess she's on House of the Dragon now. She is recognizable, talented. Glad to see her here.
Yeah, I knew her from Bates Motel when I saw this the first time. Kind of unrecognizable here compared to there. She was so frumpy in that series, and she was always on oxygen, and I guess I saw this before I saw Ready Player One. I didn't really connect her with that movie, but she's perfectly fine to lead this movie. I don't have any fault with Olivia Cooke as an actress in this movie. I have a lot of problems with Lane as a character, but I don't know that any actress could have done any better.
No, but there's all these weird scenes. Like, we have this scene at the diner where her boyfriend comes over, and he talks about how they're going to go up the coast, and he has a map, and they're going to go camping. And it sounds like some kind of horror movie that we would watch. They will never go there. None of that will ever happen. She suggests that you'll have to get that through my father. We think, oh, she must have a really overprotective father that doesn't let her do anything. That dad is in one scene after he's told her, "Your friend's dead, I got a business trip," and disappears for the rest of the film.
Every adult just skedaddles out of this movie ASAP. It's crazy.
Yeah, I guess they're fine letting their kids be killed by Ouija boards.
Yeah, it's a trope of these movies that the parents are absentee. You go back to Friday the 13th, they're all away from home at camp. You go to Nightmare on Elm Street, the parents are all drunk or checked out or having affairs. But here, your best friend's dead, but I've got to go on this trip. And he drops a line that I thought was going to be important. Nobody knows I'm going on this trip. I thought the father's unexplained absence was going to be a major plot point of this movie. I was thinking like Scream, the way Sydney's dad is missing for all that movie, and then he turned up to be tied up in a closet. So I thought for sure the fact that nobody knew the father was on this trip was going to mean something. Nope, never means anything.
But it's true of all the characters. I mean, there's this waitress that just comes and sits down at their table. I guess she's their friend. She talks about how she's trying to find a boyfriend and she's so lonely and is not monogamous and all that. You think, well, this is going to be how she dies or an important character detail or nothing that they talk about or mention, objects they find, nothing in the first 45 minutes of this movie has anything to do. We might as well just skip to the end because there's nothing that happens in these 45 minutes.
Seriously, I'm looking at my notes and I barely took any because nothing is really happening. It takes a long time for this movie to get rolling. And what's funny is they're talking on the commentary about how they cut out stuff to make it move faster. There's apparently a lot more between Lane and her sister Sarah that was cut about how Lane is going to be going to college and Sarah needs to be more responsible and she's afraid to leave Sarah alone with their dad after she's gone because Sarah has this boyfriend who we never see, but he has a black car, so we know he's dangerous.
Yeah, Subaru.
Yeah, just another plot point about like she's overprotective towards her sister. They mention you don't have to be mom. Okay, they have a dead mother, right? This has got to be relevant in the story about the afterlife. Nope, never comes up. Why would you bring that up? I mean, shit, what are they on about? This Styles White. I don't know what his special effects work is like, but this script is shit. You might as well have had it written by a Ouija board. Just move the planchette over letters, and that is what listening to this dialogue is like.
Well, even the parts that you would think they would want to make tight, right? Have some good dialogue and really dial in is when they're messing around with the Ouija board. And when they're doing that, they're not even like making it followable. Like they're shooting like 5 questions at a time before they let the spirit answer. It's like, that's how it works. Ask one question and get an answer, and then move on to the next.
And again, their questions are so dumb. It's like, what did you have for lunch? I'm like, these are not relevant. Like, all they get from the first seance is that the ghost goes by D. That's it. Again, you need to have, like, let me just help this movie. Like, her mom gives her a box full of the dead girl's things. A Ouija board should be in that box, right? You don't have 3 more scenes of them going back and forth through the house and then eventually finding the Ouija board. This just shows this director does not know how to push a story forward. There is so much time wasting here. You have a seance scene, have the ghost spirits pop up in that scene. Don't wait 30 more minutes before you see a child with her lips sewn and a mom screaming.
Yeah, I mean, what you're doing, though, is turning this into an episode of The Twilight Zone because you're cutting out all the filler. You're taking this down to a TV episode edit, which I think would be so much tighter, though. I agree with everything you're saying, but you're cutting this to the bone, and it just wouldn't even be feature length that way. But I agree, getting all these friends together through these machinations, and it's hysterical to me because Debbie's boyfriend, Pete, wasn't invited to the Ouija board seance. He just shows up at the house. They break into Debbie's house because her parents, dead kid, good time to just leave town.
Mm-hmm. She can't deal with it, so you watch my house. Yeah. All right. Yeah, of course. Well, we're going to have seances. I hope you're okay with that. And then some interior decorator. You tell me, last time we looked at the stairwell, there was a dead body hanging from it. But now somebody's hung a lamp, and it's like floating around and stuff. Like, did the ghost do that?
No, the lamp was always there because it bothered me that it's like, why was she not hung from the same spot as the lamp? Like, what was she hung from?
The lamp was there while she was hung?
Mm-hmm.
Weird.
And I was like, was there another hook on the ceiling up there, or why did she not just use the one that's hanging the lamp?
And we've seen this house before. It turns out this is the same house that they filmed Lights Out in. So it's just a cheap-to-rent house in the LA area.
It's fine. Look, the house is fine. I ain't got no problem with the set and the minimal budget. Even this cast, they're not really lighting my fire, but they're hobbled not by their acting. They're hobbled by this line, this dialogue. Again, they have no relationship with each other, and then just scene after scene, you'll just have, like, Lane walk up to the waitress, Isabella. I guess they're either walking to or from school, not exactly sure, and saying, I had a bad dream last night. The end. That's the scene. We never found out what was in the dream. It never has any relevance to anything else.
Or how about her boyfriend randomly riding his bike with a purpose to a tunnel and then seeing chalk and being spooked by a cart? Like, what was that? I don't understand what that scene was there for.
The director does explain that one. He goes, this film was feeling kind of claustrophobic because it was all happening in the house, so we wanted to open it up a little bit and have a fast-moving scene outdoors, so we put him on a bike.
Yeah, okay, genius. Yeah, all right, Alfred Hitchcock. But yeah, let's talk about what is developing here, because this is maybe one of the few things in the first 45 minutes that at least has a tie. So I noticed they never said goodbye on the board. So maybe that's the reason why the D spirit continues to prank them. If they had said goodbye to it, it wouldn't be able to reach them. But now in their daily life, the message, "Hi friend," keeps popping up. In the case of Isabel, she works at that diner. She's throwing away some garbage and she sees written on the moisture on her windshield, "Hi friend." And one of the other dudes has it scrawled on his desk. You mentioned Trevor saw it, like graffiti in a tunnel. Like, yeah, no shocker that, there's graffiti in a tunnel. Blaine, she basically sees it on her computer screen. They're neither scary nor really important. Like, if I could just jump ahead, why would DZ want to do this?
And when did DZ learn how to change font size on a drop-down menu?
Yeah, we're talking about a 9-year-old girl from the 1950s.
Yeah, this is really slow and tedious as we get from the first seance to the second seance with all these "hi friend" messages. And when we get to the second one, though, at least there's a good visual. We see the girl with the lips sewn shut. I think that is a creepy image, and the mother coming at you, and coming from Conjuring films and Insidious films, the mom is dressed in all black. She's reminding me of like Veilhead from Insidious. You would think the mom is going to be the evil one.
Yes, they're playing that game. It definitely feels like an Insidious movie in that moment. We've gone into the further. But again, I just want to point out these seance questions. You didn't kill yourself, did you? Planchette, no. Did someone hurt you? Well, if she didn't kill herself and she's dead, yeah. We don't need to ask the Ouija board that. We just have brains and we can think. See, not these kids.
But also, it's setting up things that I just don't know if we need to follow or not. Like, to me, naturally, it would be whatever we are starting to uncover and deal with is probably tied to this house, right? But no, immediately they break that. This ghost is showing up all over the place. It's following them home. It's following them to work.
And that could be because, like Stuart said, they didn't say goodbye. It also could be because they used it in a graveyard because there are dead bodies in the house. We're going to find out later on that little girl is buried there. So all 3 rules are broken.
Lots of rules are broken. Filmmaking rules, screenwriting rules. But yeah, again, they tease mysteries no one was asking. We saw earlier in that box of junk, there was a penguin. Well, guess what? It's a thumb drive. And on the thumb drive, yes, videos of me cleaning the attic. Just terrible. What means anything here? Let's just cut to the chase. In the end, DZ ends up being Doris Xander, who we're going to be told is the child of this screaming mother who was a medium back in her day. And Doris was made to be some conduit of the spirits that the medium mother was conjuring. And then when she said too much spirit stuff, her lips got sewn. Why would that child want to hurt teenagers in 2014?
Yeah, I mean, what we're getting at is the stuff coming from Lin Shaye. Because, yes, after all of this crap, they find those photos in the attic and then Google and get Doris's name and find out Doris's sister is Lin Shaye at a insane asylum.
Another hilarious detail. They make a big point of this. All right, I'm going to go to this asylum, and the big sign, established in 1971, which is 20 years after this child was committed to be there for killing her mom. Who is making this fucking movie? But you're telling me all of this backstory was invented much later, probably after they filmed that scene of her walking by the plaque that said established in 1971.
Or before, because the Lin Shaye stuff was all pickups done way after the fact, and the house she's going into, because Shelley Hennig is here, my mind is on Teen Wolf. That's actually the Eichen house, the Arkham Asylum of Teen Wolf that she's going into. So it's the same building there. I don't know, maybe this Paulina got moved to a different mental institution in her time there. But yeah, Paulette is going to say that it was the mother who was a medium and used Doris in these seances, and that the mother went insane and sewed Doris's mouth shut.
To stop the spirit voices. She was too good at her job. She was saying too much. They weren't even using a Ouija board. It was just this girl was talking in the voices of the spirits. And so to stop that, they sewed her mouth. And then mom probably, I love the fact that they're Googling newspapers from the 1950s. And they're just speculating. Mom probably did it, but we never found a body. But the sister killed the mom, and now she's at this asylum. Ooh, lordy.
Yeah, but we're supposed to think the mother was insane, and that's why she sewed Doris's mouth shut.
Right, yes. Mommy Dearest. It's a cruel, and again, Insidious did this as well, with the whole veil head, like making a boy child dress up as a girl, and all this childhood trauma is supposedly the reasons why these spirits are here. But again, I want to ask you, we're going to now talk about these teens being murdered one by one. I neither understand why they're killed or how they die. Isabel comes home from her job, pours a bath, starts flossing, and then all of a sudden her eyes just go white and she's hitting her head on the sink?
Yeah, well, the floss was obviously supposed to be spooky, right? Because the girl has her mouth sewn shut, and now you're putting floss in your mouth, so that's why we're supposed to think that. But why, at that moment, the spirit possesses her, and the way she dies is just so stupid. She just falls. She just falls over and hits her head on the sink, and now she's dead. But this is PG-13. The fact that there's any death in this at all is actually shocking to me. We're going to build up a body count, but it's all going to happen either lamely or off screen.
Why would Doris want to kill teenagers? Can anyone answer that? She'd want to kill her mom for making her do this. Maybe she's got some problems with her sister for killing the mom. I don't know. But it was a pretty self-contained family trauma. I don't get the impression that she's Freddy Krueger. I don't understand why a child now wants to murder these teenagers. And again, why you would take her out. Yeah, I guess you want to seal their lips like your lips were sealed. That's what you're saying with the floss. But then bashing her head on the sink, totally random.
Yeah, I thought it was because she was protecting her house, her home. That makes sense. They were invading her home, and she's protecting the house. Great. But she's attacking them everywhere they go.
Yeah, they said, we're not going to play the Ouija game. We're not going to go to this house anymore. Problem solved. She cunts them down. And then, like, Pete, the boyfriend, I don't even know what happens to him. He just comes home one night, his eyes go white, and they get a text. Oh, he's dead. Could they not be bothered? Was the scene so stupid looking that they just couldn't show it?
Yeah, I couldn't believe that's what they did with that. What's really funny is these characters mattered so little that I don't miss them when they're gone. They were barely even part of it. We're focused so much on these two sisters of Lane and Sarah that these friends barely have time to register at all. And so when they die, it's like, okay, it's not like they were adding anything to the plot. None of them were doing anything important in this movie.
No, but this is obviously horror formula. We're knocking people off. If this is Nightmare on Elm Street, we want to see the creative ways in which the evil spirit is going to take them out, presumably with a Ouija board, because that's the name of the movie. But if you want to kill her in the bathroom with floss, you go, girl, I guess. But, like, to not even show the death of Pete is just to not care, right? We just don't even care anymore.
Yeah, we see him get possessed, I guess. His eyes turn white and veins pop out of his face. But, yeah, I mean, it feels like they used up all their ideas on Isabella's death and only used one of them. Like, I thought she was going to drown, or I thought maybe she would cut through her face with the floss or something. And like Arnie, you already said, feels like somebody watched Final Destination and was like, ooh, good idea, but they didn't understand what they were watching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go with it. I mean, again, this is what is going to be intriguing to people. The creative death is what you can do. And even on PG-13, I refuse to believe that they couldn't show some kind of stylish death. That is why we are here. They dared to play with this evil board, and now some ghoul is making them die in creative ways. It writes itself. So why are you making it so hard to follow? Why are you making it so that nobody cares? random people walk in a scene and you're not even exactly sure why they're dead except you get a text later. Anyway, they solve the problem of DZ, that Doris is actually down in the basement. Arnie, you've already talked about no smell problems. You buy a house, you don't notice it has a secret room behind the boiler in which corpses have sealed lips. But if you open up those lips, snip them free, it looks like the little girl, like hurricane breath, knocked mama away, and now they just leave the body down there? They're like, okay, problem solved, we'll leave the corpse and go on with our lives?
Yeah, I think that they're so freaked out by what happened, they just race out of the house, and yeah, they leave the dead body and everything just right there. It's ridiculous, but...
Yeah, but when we get back to Lin Shaye, she's giggling, ha ha ha, you fell for my evil plan. You believed Mommy Dearest was the evil one, but in fact, it is this little girl who now has the mouth to release more demonic silliness, and she'll be coming for you.
And the mother, I guess, was running and screaming to try to prevent the people from contacting Doris. The mother will never come back into this movie again. The mother ghost is now just disappeared.
She blew away with the wind, with the gust of breath, I believe.
I have to say, that was kind of a cool effect. You know, she was kind of dusted into the wall, and there's somewhat of like a shadow left of dust on the wall in the shape of her body.
I guess. There's not a lot that I would use the word cool.
I'm looking for little things to latch on to here.
It's the kind of stuff I was expecting to see a lot of. Yes, I'm coming for a supernatural seance movie. I want to see all kinds of freaky stuff happening in dark rooms in the house. I don't mind the claustrophobia. We didn't need to go outside the house. You just need to show us cool things inside the house. And on that front, they keep failing again and again. They could have made this all one night after a seance, right? We didn't even need to leave the house. You could have just made it like, rack them up. Here are all your teenagers. They're coming over for a seance to talk to their dead friend and find out why she died. And now they got to deal with a demon that's going to kill them one by one. That's all you had to do.
Yeah, because it makes the parents' absence even more ridiculous at this point. Like, the dad's not going to call off his business trip because now 3 of his daughter's friends have died in the last couple days. I think that's something you come home for.
Yeah, and then, like, you're saying family friend or maybe grandma is, like, doing the laundry? Maybe she's, washing clothes or something? But, like, she's there just to tell him, don't be messing with no Ouija board, and if you do, burn the board with the body. Helpful advice from someone that doesn't know anything about Ouija boards.
She messed around with Ouija boards back in the 70s, man. She knows all about it.
Okay. Again, she's telling them don't mess with it, but she seems to know an awful lot about it. And pretty soon, yes, they're all going back to the house for some kind of finale, in which we've already had Trevor try to put the tarp over the pool, and now, in one of the, I guess, more ominous scenes, some ghoul pushes him in the water and he drowns. Who was that?
I thought that was Doris, and they set this up earlier, because I remember when they're checking on the house, Lane said, oh, be sure the cover's on the pool, and I've mentioned on previous podcasts how I have that phobia about pool covers and drowning, so here they're gonna go into that with Chekhov's pool cover.
Yeah, I guess I didn't recognize that as a child. That pushed, the child ghost pushed him in the pool?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I thought.
All right, sure, whatever.
Arnie, isn't your fear of pool covers being trapped underneath the pool cover, not being able to get up? This guy's just laying on top of it.
Yeah, but he gets tangled in it. He, falls in it and it wraps around him, and then you are kind of bound and drowning.
Yeah, pretty soon he's wide-eyed and standing in the corner, Blair Witch style. And again, these are people that have seen imagery from horror movies, but probably have never paid attention to a story before. They seem to have no ability to follow A, B to C. It's just amazing how this movie is like a series of, I don't know, like crack open a bunch of fortune cookies and stitch the fortunes together, and that's how this feels plotted. Suddenly, they're just in the room? You tell me what happens here. They're suddenly in the room, and the dead girl, the suicide hung from the lights, is going to be playing Ouija?
Yeah, what happens is there's only 2 left, and those are the sisters, Lane and Sarah. And Doris is just picking these people off one by one, right? I mean, they're all getting killed. Doris goes after Sarah, and Lane evokes a rule. Since you can't play Ouija alone, Lane is going to play Ouija And that means Doris has to come attack Lane for breaking that rule and leave Sarah alone. But then, because test audiences really wanted to see Debbie return, Debbie's just going to appear as a spirit to join with Lane while playing Ouija and having some kind of battle of the wills against Doris.
Yeah, nonsense. This is not a climax. And again, what has been solved here? They burn the board and her body, so Doris is just going to upchuck all the evil spirits in her body and disappear. That's the end. Except we got one more, tease the sequel. Lane is now the one flossing in the bathroom mirror. And, they can't even commit to what might be coming. She looks through the planchette and, I don't know. Whatever you think of is probably better than what the screenwriters would show you.
I can come up with a lot that's scarier than what these screenwriters came up with, I gotta say. I think that the little bug that crawled out of my shower drain the other day is scarier than anything in this movie. But, as friends we gather, hearts are true, spirits near, we ask of you, do you recommend Ouija? Justin.
Can you feel our hands moving towards the no section of the board? So, listen, we ripped this movie apart, but I will say there's some scenes that we didn't talk about, and the film is shot well. It looks nice. If you're walking through a room and you just kind of glance over, you might trick yourself into thinking this is a real movie on TV that you could watch. But that's the problem. It's just not put together in any cohesive way that would make you want to sit down and finish watching it wherever you pick it up. But there are some vignettes that I think would work as some 5-minute scary YouTube videos. There's a scene where they're investigating and they go into the attic and she finds some stuff up there, and out of the corner of her eye she catches a shadow. That stuff is creepy. It works. The basement set is pretty good. That's got some creepiness and some good vibes down there. But they don't do anything with this. This movie just ends up being confusing and maddening because you're trying to write the story in your head as it's going along, and it's just doing the opposite of everything that you're coming up with that would make sense. I don't have a whole heck of a lot to say about this that's good, so it's an easy not recommend. I mean, you can skip this one and leave it in the closet with the rest of the board games you haven't played.
Stuart.
Yeah, the game being played here is not Ouija, it's telephone. The one where you tell the person behind you a secret, and then they're going to turn to the person behind them and tell them what they heard, and by the time it gets to the person at the end, it has nothing to do with the story that it was when it started, and that is the screenwriting process of this movie. What they spent their time on, setting up character details and relationships and boyfriends that are going to be doing this, and all these details come to naught by the time we actually find out what's going on in this house with Lin Shaye and the 50s and all of that. You tell me how it has any relevance to the story of Lane and her dead friend. It is an utter mess, which makes it kind of sound like a brown arrow. And I flirted with the idea, but it's not even really bad in the way that Battleship is bad. I mean, in the end, it's too uneventful. Like when you play a Ouija, you sit there and you wait for something to happen. It's not really fun because nothing's going to happen. And that's the experience of this movie. I'll concede that, yes, maybe one or two images would have worked in some kind of Goosebumps, Scary Tales to tell in the dark, whatever that movie was. Yeah, I feel like there's a tween horror audience that would appreciate about 35 seconds of this movie, but the rest of it is an interminable bore. It's nothing you can understand happening to a bunch of nobodies for no obvious reason. And so for that, let's move that planchette to a hard no. Don't watch, not recommend.
So you're saying that it accurately represents playing an actual game of Ouija?
Yeah, sit there and wait for the spookiness that never happens. But make sure you do it for 90 minutes. At least this movie's short.
Yeah, I'm sitting at the board, my hands on the planchette. Whoa, that was fast. It whipped to the no in the corner. The spirits are right. This is a solid not recommend. I mean, Ouija is the kind of horror film that feels like it was conjured not from the spirit world, but from a checklist of tired ghost movie cliches. It's a lifeless blend of jump scares, bland and stupid characters, a plot as thin as the Ouija board's own instruction sheet. I mean, this Exorcist wannabe doesn't conjure up any terror or even intrigue. And the cast is so milquetoast that I almost didn't even notice as each one is killed and went missing from the film. But the dead are the lucky ones, because they didn't have to stay till the end of this board game movie that left me very bored indeed. But I'll say this. I've gone on the record. I've said it before online. I may have said it in a previous podcast. But I said on the UK radio show, Ouija 2, Origin of Evil, is the biggest step up from an original film I've ever seen.
Okay, well, I'll take it, because there's no way that I want to watch any continuation of what we just saw. Hopefully it has nothing to do. Maybe they just take the idea of kids playing with a spirit board and run far away from this nonsense.
And on the plus side, it does have a director who has worked again, Mike Flanagan. We've reviewed quite a bit of his stuff. He's become kind of the new Frank Darabont. He's just going to do Stephen King things.
Oh, no. Mike Flanagan's great. I'm a huge fan of him. We'll discuss him next week, and that gives me a little bit of hope. In the meantime, on Fridays, we're still trying to plug away talking about the way we've understood the information age from hacker movies. We've reached the zenith, right? Strap on the rollerblades, get the VR helmet, cut your hair at weird angles and dye it platinum blonde, because we're going to hackers.
Ooh.
I can't wait. I want to see your reaction, Stuart. I know mine, but I don't think you've ever seen a movie like this before.
I mean, it feels like a jeans commercial that got 90 minutes long. I feel like I lived in the 90s. I remember what the cool kids wanted to be. It feels like the cool kids trying to understand this internet thing, and it looks toxically hip, is the way I would describe it. But we'll see. If it ends up being a delightful little movie, I'll take it at this point. It hasn't been such a great run so far.
Is it the origins of the tech bros? Is that what we're about to witness?
Yeah, if one of the tech bros is Fisher Stevens, but yes.
Great.
So that is available this Friday for gold level donors. I guarantee you're going to want to hack the planet with us and dial in on Friday. So head to nowplayingpodcast.com/donate so you can support Now Playing, help us keep doing the show we do every week, and hear these 8 bonus hacker reviews. We've done war games, we've done the net, we've done sneakers, and this Friday, hackers. So thank you for listening to Now Playing. Justin, Stuart, thank you for joining me. Now time to pick up the pieces and go home.
So be honest. Was it you moving the planchette?
No. You?
No. No way.
Thank you for listening to this Now Playing Podcast movie review.
I can't thank you enough. That was amazing.
Support from listeners like you keeps Now Playing Podcast on the air.
I don't know how else to make you hear me.
You can donate directly by tapping the support button at nowplayingpodcast.com.
Cost us $5.
Help us spread the word about this show by leaving a 5-star review on Stitcher, Podbean, iTunes, or your podcast store of choice.
We tell them the truth, we just need to help them believe it.
You can also compare notes with us on Letterboxd. Go to letterboxd.com/nowplaying to see what our hosts are watching when we're not recording podcasts. And follow Now Playing on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and our YouTube channel.
I wish you'd join us. It could help you heal.
On our site, you can hear reviews for every installment in the world's biggest film franchises, including the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Star Wars, Spider-Man, Batman, X-Men, James Bond, Middle-earth, Jurassic Park, Fast and Furious, and Transformers.
I heard the voices too. They tell you the most wonderful, awful things.
Now Playing Podcast is produced by Arnie Carvalho.
The energy is growing, and it is hard to stop.
Associate produced by Jason Latham.
You wanted us to play, we did, and now we can leave it alone.
Now Playing is edited by Heath, Santiago, and Arnie.
He's gone. He lives in the dark and the cold, and he screams and screams and screams.
Now Playing credits read by Brock.
We're gonna need to spice that showmanship up a little.
The opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual hosts and may not reflect the views of Venganza Media Incorporated.
No secrets between us, remember?
Venganza Media Incorporated is not affiliated with, and this podcast has not been prepared, approved, or licensed by any entity that created the film analyzed herein.
Scam is a lie. We don't lie. We help people.
All movie clips and music included in this podcast are the intellectual property of their respective copyright holders. They are included here for the purpose of review, and no infringement is intended.
Think that'll work?
I honestly don't know.
Now Playing Podcast is an exclusive trademark of and may not be used without the express written permission of Venganza Media Incorporated.
I don't want to go. I want to stay here and talk to my friends.
Now Playing is a Venganza Media production, copyright 2025, and no part of this show may be reproduced, repurposed, or redistributed without the written permission of Venganza Media Incorporated. All rights reserved.
You were never alone. I'll never be alone. I'll never be alone again.